Speaking Myanmar, lessons for English-speaking learners. The affirmative particle. In this lesson, I'm going to review the basic function of particles. You'll also learn how to use one particular verb particle, where to put it, and what it means. I'll also show you how to use adjectives and how it's different than English. So what are particles? Well, in Myanmar, they're parts of speech that are added to nouns, verbs, and other major elements of speech to add meaning. To give you an example, look at the following sentence. There is a book on the table. Sabue boma sa ota o shide. Now there are 4 different particles in this simple sentence. Here's the first, o. I'll call it a counter word. Although particles are not really words, it's used when you're indicating a specific number of books, but only books. Actually, there are many different counter words for different things. I'll discuss that in a lesson on counter words. In this second example, there are actually 2 particles used together. The first particle, bo, indicates that the book is on top of the table, but it has to be combined with the second particle, ma, to indicate that's where it's at. Our next example is what's called a verb ending particle, de. Now this is the one I want to talk about in this lesson. It's pronounced te, or more often de, and I'll explain how to know the difference in this lesson. So let's see how it works with some verbs. Let's look at some examples of verbs. First, some simple one-syllable verbs. For instance, the verb for to come, la. To go, twa. To eat, sa. And to like, jai. The verb for to know, ti. Now some verbs are created using a combination of verbs or a noun and a verb, so they have more than one syllable. Here are 3 examples. To walk, lan shao. To learn, then you. And to marry, let ta. Now in all of these examples, those words are the root verb. But notice they also include the word to in the definition. But to use them in sentences, you have to add a particle. Let me show you how that works. Here's the verb particle I'm going to add to these verbs. It's pronounced te or de. The first verb, for to come, then becomes la de. Notice the particle comes after the verb. That's the main thing to remember here. Let's look at some of the other verbs. To go, tuare. To eat, sare. And to like, jaite. Ooh, that last verb, jaite, uses the te pronunciation with the T sound. Why? It's because the verb itself ends with a stop tone, a very abrupt ending. And when that happens, this particle then starts with a T sound. Now that's a rule of pronunciation that's applied throughout speech, and I'm going to cover it in another lesson. But just what meaning does this particle give to the verb? Well, first, it does not mean to. Remember, that's already implied in the root verb. Secondly, while some have referred to this as present tense, it can also be used for past tense, so that's not totally accurate either. Really, it means that the statement you're making is true. This is the way it is. Some refer to it as the affirmative particle, and I think that's a good definition, so it's the one I'm going to use. It'll even make more sense when you see how to form a negative statement In other words, to say you are not doing something. So let's look at this affirmative particle in two sentences. Now I've put the verb in blue in these sentences, and the particle remains in red. So here's the first sentence. That means I love my friends. The second, I live in Thailand. So that should seem fairly straightforward. The verb particle follows immediately after the verb here at the end of the sentence. And what we're basically saying is, this is so. I live in Thailand. This is so. I love my friends. This is so. But now let's talk about using adjectives in Myanmar. So remember from your grammar lessons, an adjective is a descriptive word. It may explain how someone feels: tired, hungry, happy, nervous. It may give a description of someone or something, as tall or short, thick, deep, distant. You use adjectives to describe the weather conditions: hot, cold, pleasant, sunny. Well, in the English language, what verb are these adjectives always used with? Well, they have to be accompanied by the verb to be. And in English, you have to learn how to use the right form of that verb, something called conjugating verbs. For example, I am tired. She is happy. They are nervous. The weather was cold. Today it will be sunny. Conditions were pleasant. But in Myanmar, adjectives are handled a little bit differently. To explain, I'll show you three simple sentences that use adjectives. Let's look at three sentences that use adjectives. The first, he is tired. He is hungry. It is hot. Each of those describes a condition of something or how someone feels. But let me show you how you'd say them in Myanmar. To say he's tired, you would say, Tuga more. To say he's hungry, Tuga sare. To say it's hot, Pure. Now here's the main point. There is no word for to be or is in these sentences, and that's because adjectives are handled the same way as verbs. In fact, the definition for the root word, like mo for tired, is really to be tired. So just like a verb, it includes the to be meaning, or in all of these examples, is. Now there is a word for to be or is. When would you use it? While you don't use the verb to be with adjectives, it is used when you're identifying what something is. So for example, he is a teacher. That is an apple. Now in this case, you're going to use the affirmative verb particle ending, but what you need is the verb for is. And here it is. It's pronounced pit. So when you combine it with the affirmative verb particle, it would be pitte. It uses the TEH pronunciation because the verb for to be ends with that abrupt stop tone. Pitte. So here are two examples then. He is a teacher. Tuga sea pitte. That is an apple. Edaga pandi pitte. Now let's review this lesson. So in review, particles are parts of speech combined with other words to give meaning. You're going to use them a lot, and there are many to learn. Verb particles are added after a verb to add meaning, such as you are coming or you are not coming. Adjectives have no need for the to be verb, for is. Instead, they're treated like verbs and often use the same particles as verbs. And that finishes this lesson.